What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles in our season preview series, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button. It really would help me, my channel, the algorithm, all that a ton. If you're new right here, like what you see, want to see more of it, just hit that big red subscribe button. Tell me what you think about Philadelphia, or tell me why you think I'm wrong. I am very high on this team. We'll kind of hit on that here in a moment, but how many wins do you think the Eagles come away with? Who are some X factors and some games you're looking forward to watching Philadelphia play this year? Love to have your thoughts. It's a conversation down below in the comment section. I respond to just about every comment, so let's talk about the Eagles down in the comments section. New to the series, welcome to it. Be sure to go back out, check out the videos we've done so far, and let's waste no more time and start talking about Philly. Win range 9-13. I have a hard time thinking this team doesn't go over 500, and honestly, even if they go 9-8, given the state of the NFC, that might be good enough to get them into the playoffs, right? Because you're looking at probably two teams from the NFC West. Maybe the Vikings are a factor there in the NFC North. And then it's, the Saints in the South I feel pretty good about. So it's going to probably come down to a second team in the NFC North or a second team in the NFC East. So even 9-8, I could see the Eagles being back where they were last year as like the 7th seed that sneaks into the playoffs. But I'm obviously a lot higher than that. 13-4 is my record prediction. That might change once we do my updated take, but man, they have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. They play in a really weak division. That and the AFC South might be probably the two weakest divisions. And, every year we get one of those teams where the record doesn't really match up with how good they are. I go back, 2 seasons ago, the Steelers start the year 11-0. They finish 12-4. First round bounce in the wild card to Cleveland. That Steelers team was not a 12-4 squad. Last year, the Cardinals start out 7-0, kind of come back down to earth middle of the year. They have some injuries, and, Kyler misses time, D-Hop, et cetera, et cetera. But they weren't necessarily, of all teams to be the last undefeated squad in the NFL, the Cardinals were a surprise there. So eventually they kind of came back down to earth and their record got closer to where they actually were. So I think the Eagles could be a team like that. Now, it's not to say the Eagles are bums. Clearly, I don't think that. But you look at an easy schedule and a really well-balanced roster, I think those are two key ingredients for a team over exceeding what actually is in place. But now I'm going to go position group by position group so you can get a feel for what I like about this roster. I have kind of morphed into this Jalen Hurts believer. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be like an elite quarterback this year, but all we've seen him do from Alabama to Oklahoma to his rookie year in those 4 games, starting or filling in and then starting for Carson Wentz. And then rookie year Hurts, just last year Hurts in year 2. All he's done is getting better. Now, they've been small incremental steps in the right direction, but they've been steps in the right direction, and there's no reason to think that trend's going to stop now. Year 2 with Nick Sirianni in the offense, he should be more comfortable. You add an A.J. Brown, which leads me into that wide receiver room I'm excited about. We'll talk about Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor a little later, but that 1-2 punch, this team has 2 ones, and I think in the NFL today, you need 2 ones. A.J. Brown, I'm a huge A.J. Brown fan, and I think they got him at a pretty solid, price point for that contract extension, by the way. And then Devonta Smith, especially now as the Z, where you can get, a guy with a smaller frame who did struggle a little bit with press coverage last year off the line of scrimmage and let him dice up potentially number 2 corners with his route running. Yeah, that sounds like a perfect match made in heaven for his skill set in this offense entirely. The offensive line continues to be a really solid unit and even have depth, right? Because if they don't trade Andre Dillard, that's one of the best swing tackles in the NFL. And you have Cam Jurgens looking great, in the preseason. Yeah, I know it's preseason football, but there's some additional depth if something happens to, Jason Kelsey or something like that. So it's a good offensive line. It's an offensive line with depth. And then even in the backfield, Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, somebody I'm a big fan of, especially, this Memphis line of wide receivers turned running backs. Antonio Gibson's had his fumble issues, haven't really had the same issue with Gainwell, but his pass catching prowess with Miles Sanders being a guy who can do just about anything. That's a really nice tandem. Boston Scott's been a good football player through his career. It'll be interesting to see what this team does long-term with their running back spot. As of right now, Sanders and Scott scheduled to be free agents. I don't think of Gainwell as like a workhorse bell cow back. So, in my last mock draft, I had him going Bijan Robinson. But that's another conversation for another time. But as it stands right now, this offense is really well balanced. It has depth at areas that it needs to. Add one more solid enough wide receiver, which again, we'll come back to Watkins and Reagor later. And this team could be scary on that side of the ball. And plus Nick Sirianni, former offensive coordinator, and Frank Reich, that all kind of comes together. And then you get to the defense and Jonathan Gannon saying, in year 2, we're going to take a step forward after playing a lot of, soft zone, keeping the ball in front of them last year. You look at the defensive line. It's a team that under Howie Roseman continues to pour assets into that. And whether it's Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, or, it's Derek Barnett and Brandon Ingram. They have options there on the edge. They got a nice rotation on the inside. Javon Hargrave has been a really nice player since leaving Pittsburgh, and specifically as a pass rusher. Fletcher Cox, even as he's getting older, still a high caliber football player. You added Jordan Davis, this one-of-one type of behemoth there in the middle. And then you also got Milton Williams from the 2021 draft and Marlon Tuipulotu from USC in the 2021 draft. They have invested a ton of resources there, and I think there's a lot of talent to use. So in a rotation, keeping those guys fresh, that pass rush and even the run stoppers there, Tuipulotu and Davis, going to be big factors, and that's going to be a huge strength. We'll talk about linebacker, but TJ Edwards has been really solid. Nakobe Dean has a chance to really impress this year. But leaving from there, you get to the cornerbacks, and getting James Bradbury for pennies on the dollar, essentially, that's just good business. And furthermore, not only is he a good addition because they needed a number 2 corner, now you don't have to face him twice a year because he's not on the Giants anymore. So it's a win in multiple categories there, but also Darius Slay still playing good football. And then, nickel corner, Avonte Maddox has been really solid. The depth from that point onward is a little iffy. Zach McPherson, Tate Gowan was somebody I was a big fan of from UCF, but drafted by the Cardinals, traded as a rookie. That's not always a great sign. So maybe Gowan, I was wrongly high on him. Also have Josiah Scott as a potential another nickel option. So some of the depth beyond the starters is a bit of a concern, but this starting 3 is really, really solid. Then you get to the safeties, and that's where I have some concerns. Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, Jaquiski Tartt, and Kayvon Wallace. The good news and the bright side of all that is they have 4 guys who at one point or the other have been solid starters. Marcus Epps was pretty good last year, so I'm a little less concerned about him, but can Anthony Harris roll back the clock one more time? Can Jaquiski Tartt be solid? What does Kayvon Wallace look like in this defense? So a lot of questions there, but that's really kind of the one weak point on this team right now. And, all in all, that's not too big of a concern of mine. So, yeah, definitely high on this team. And that kind of leads me into my realistic goal, make the playoffs. You were there last year, and I think the roster's done nothing but get better. Now you're going to year 2 with Sirianni, another year of him working with Hurts. The expectation should go nowhere but up here for Philadelphia. And then reach goal, maybe flirt with that number 1 seed. Again, I'm not saying the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, but I'm saying with a good roster and an easy schedule, they can make a push. Now, even if they don't get there, that's kind of where I'm going to the or caveat here. Host a playoff game, which I have them winning the division, so that feels likely, at least in the way I look at the league, getting closer and closer to the regular season. I think this team will host a playoff game, and depending on that seeding, man, if they could steal the 1 seed, that would be spicy. Or even if they just get a home playoff game and they can win that, opportunities aplenty there for Philadelphia. So I hosting a playoff game didn't feel like a big enough reach. That's why I put the 1 seed in there, but it is kind of a tough team to come up with because I don't think they're Super Bowl competitive just yet, unless Hurts is really, really good this year. But definitely a good squad that, again, aided by a easy schedule. Let's move on to our X Factors now. These are not superstars like we should expect Darius Slay to be really solid. We should expect A.J. Brown to be a stud. Jordan Mailata has become one of the best left tackles in the league. He should continue to be something like that. So these are true 50-50 difference makers. If they exceed expectations, it makes the Eagles that much more dangerous. Or they're players that I think potentially could fall short, and that could hurt the Eagles' outlook. So they are true wild card propositions. That's why I have them in my X Factors. So Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor right now. Watkins is listed as a slot wide receiver, a ton of speed. And they both kind of fit that, slot, field stretching wide receiver. And you look at the 2 guys that are starting on the outside. Smith, crafty route runner, solid enough athlete, but long speed is not his game. And then A.J. Brown is a yak machine who gets open in the underneath and intermediate parts of the field. Again, speed not necessarily his game. So adding that element, I think, is a big plus. Hurts may not have this howitzer for an arm, but he can get the ball down there. So just having defenses respect that deep threat, I think will go a long way. And then, also think about what it does for Miles Sanders. If you keep safeties on us, having to respect the deep ball opens up a little bit more running room. It clears out the box for A.J. Brown in the underneath passing game. So a lot of different things it opens up, but it just comes down to who it's going to be. And Reagor, is he a cut candidate? Is he a potential trade guy? So that's tough. And the fact that Watkins is listed as the starting slot wide receiver just a couple years after Reagor was a first-round pick. A lot has been talked about there. That is definitely a disappointment. But I also kind of like Quez Watkins, so I'm not too worried about that there. But really, this, and then you look at like KJ Osborne in Minnesota, these guys don't have to be world beaters. They just got to be solid number 3 wide receivers behind 2 really good options. So if you get average, I think it's a solid baseline to round out that wide receiver room. Moving on to Nakobe Dean. So this is where you start to get, and this defense could be really special, really. So Nakobe Dean, 3rd round pick, falls because of the size and the injury concerns, but he was so good at Georgia. He was all over the field, impact player in the run game, in coverage, well-rounded college athlete. And part of the other concern was, okay, well, yeah, a lot of linebackers would look good playing behind Jordan Davis. Well, that situation is carried over into Philadelphia. So that bodes and gives me a lot of confidence that Nakobe Dean can be a good football player. Right now listed as a backup behind Edwards, and then Kazir White coming over from the Chargers. But, White, I'm not entirely sold on him being a long-term starter. TJ Edwards, despite not being a great athlete, has been a solid player. I think in a perfect world, that nickel set, 2 linebackers on the field is Edwards and Dean. So if Dean can learn the playbook, which, apparently he did that super quick at Georgia, like the first week of practices, he was out there kind of being the mic. So hopefully he can do the same thing in Philadelphia and take that Jonathan Gannon defense, And if he does, that type of an athlete is just not something that we've seen in the middle of that Philadelphia defense. And that type of an impact could elevate this Eagles defense to, again, you've already heard me sing the praises of what I think that pass rush and that front four, and whatever rotation it breaks out to be. I think that's a scary unit. I think the cornerback room is solid enough. We'll see what the safety position looks like, but man, if Dean were to be something that the Eagles just haven't had over the last decade plus, that bodes really well for this team's long-term, not only for this year, but also long-term projection. And then Jaquiski Tartt. And Tartt's been a solid player through his entire stint with the 49ers, mid-60s Pro Football Focus grade. Nothing to write home about, but he's been solid and he's been stable. And Marcus Epps has been a good football player and primarily playing inside the box. Can Jaquiski Tartt just be a Band-Aid fixture as that free safety? Because, Anthony Harris has really kind of struggled over the last couple of years. Had that one awesome year in Minnesota, has not been able to replicate that type of ball hawk ability. So if you're not going to get that Anthony Harris, can Jaquiski Tartt just be solid, stable, fine, as that free safety? And if so, that takes away one of my big concerns, specifically if Jonathan Gannon's going to still play a lot of, too high, a lot of zone. Coverage ability is going to be a big part of this, and Epps is more so that box safety guy. So if Tartt's fine, it alleviates one of my concerns with that secondary. And again, I like the corners. So if they get decent safety play, that defense just gets that much better, in my opinion. And again, we're talking about a team that's trying to flirt with the 1 seed because of an easy schedule and could potentially, be a 12, 13 win team. And, if Tartt's solid, that defense is that much better. And it makes me feel that much better about winning the NFC East, which, again, also a big plus and should be a big goal in mind for the Eagles. So moving on from X Factors, let's talk about games to watch. No division games here. All NFC East opponents are obviously big ones to watch for the Eagles. Week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings. Primetime game. Also just a team that's, you're going to be battling for a potential wild card spot, especially if the Cowboys do win the NFC East. Then you're talking about the Eagles and the Vikings potentially being the 2 teams that are fighting for that 7 seed. Maybe the Saints or the other one in there. I think I like the Saints a little bit more than the Vikings. I also like the Eagles a little bit more. So in my opinion, it's more so the Cowboys and the Vikings, which, stay tuned. Come back for when we do our updated record predictions and playoff predictions. You'll see which one I have getting in and which one I have watching the postseason at home. But in a different situation, it could be the Eagles and the Vikings, battling for a playoff positioning, but it's also a primetime game where it's like, what do the Vikings look like under Kevin O'Connell? This is the first chance on a national stage people get to watch. And then year 2, Nick Sirianni, does Jalen Hurts take that step forward? And how good does he look on primetime? And how big of an addition is A.J. Brown? So right off the jump, national game, we get to see some of the questions we've been asking all offseason, get an answer to it. Fast forward to week 12 against the Green Bay Packers again. Depending on the NFC North, I don't think this is going to be wild card seeding implications, but maybe. But it is another primetime game. The Eagles last year came out a little rocky, and eventually the offense kind of found its footing as a very run heavy approach. But this also is just a fun matchup between an offense, depending on how good Jalen Hurts is a really solid unit and can beat you through the air, but also through the run game against one of the best defenses in the NFL, maybe the best defense on paper in Green Bay. So it's a really nice juxtaposition of strength on strength, flipping sides. I like this Eagles defense, and I like its pass rush against a Packers offensive line that has taken some blows over the past couple of years, but it's still one of the better units. So who wins that battle at the line of scrimmage with the Packers offense, Eagles defense? That's a fun one. And also, the Packers are going to need wide receivers to make plays against Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So who is that guy to step up for the Packers? And if they don't, can the Eagles steal one away from what I think a lot of people would say is a better team? And that's one of those situations where if the Eagles match up a little bit better, maybe are a little healthier by week 12, steal this game from the Packers, it could be one of those different, tie-breaking considerations once we get to the end of the season that give the Eagles the 2 seed or maybe even the 1 seed. So one of those interesting wrinkles to this game. And then week 17 against the Saints, again, playoff implications, blah, blah, blah. I've already kind of hit on that. But again, 2 really well-rounded rosters. The Eagles have a little bit more depth where if the Saints have one key injury, a Cam Jordan goes down, a Demario Davis, a Marshawn Lattimore, specifically on the defensive side, clearly, I start to have some questions. The Eagles have a little bit more depth on the offensive line and the defensive line, so I'm not as concerned, but I did voice some issues with the secondary depth. But this is just going to be such a fun game to watch and see if they are completely healthy. Week 17, who has that late push to get into the postseason or who's getting that late momentum? Jameis Winston, what does he look like year 2, in New Orleans? Year 2, Jalen Hurts with Nick Sirianni. There's just so many different storylines. Now, granted, we'll have a good idea of, how the season is played out by the time we get to week 17. But as it sits right now, these are 2 teams that I have some high expectations for. Can they hit them? I can't wait to find out. But those are my games to watch, and that's going to do it for my Philadelphia Eagles season preview video. Tell me what you think about the Birds down below in the comments section. How many wins you think they come away with? Or how crazy am I for thinking they can win 13? Who are some X factors and some games you're looking forward to watching Philadelphia play this year? Love to have your thoughts, and it's a conversation down below in the comments section. So let's talk about the Eagles in the comments section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton. If you're new around here, like what you see, want to see more of it, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach. I'm signing off.